It's time to work on the top for the desk. The way I'm going to construct this top is it's going to be 1.5 inches thick. So I've got 2 layers of 1/2 inch plywood, actually a little bit less than 1/2 inch per layer. And then I've got 2 layers of 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard. And the idea is to sandwich the 2 layers of plywood between the 2 layers of medium density fiberboard. And then I'll veneer on top of the medium density fiberboard, and that'll give me a very smooth veneer surface. Now, the shape of this top is, it's square on the sides and the back, but the front is bowed out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue up the 2 layers of plywood and 1 layer of medium density fiberboard today. Then I'm going to take the other layer of medium density fiberboard and use that to make a template, the exact shape of what this top will be. When I am ready to pull the laminate of plywood and 1 layer of MDF out of the bag, out of the vacuum bag, I can then lay the template on there, make a pencil line, rough cut a little bit oversized on the shape, and then go ahead and tack the template in place. It becomes the other layer of, the top layer of the desk. I'll go ahead and put all that in the vacuum bag with glue, and when I'm done with that glue up, I can use a straight bit with a bearing guide in my router and run around that template and go ahead, and that would trim up the plywood and the other layer of MDF to the exact shape of the top. So it sounds a little complicated, but it's the fastest way to get to a very high quality result. Now, the top itself is going to be 84 inches long, and that includes a walnut banding around the perimeter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and cut off some of the plywood and MDF that I'm not going to need, and that'll make it a little easier to wrestle this thing into the vacuum bag. I've got my saber saw with a medium tooth blade. I've gone ahead and clamped together the waste pieces so they don't just fall on me. I'm going to go ahead and just make a rough cut. Just to help me manage this as I get near the end of the cutoff, I'm going to go ahead and clamp together the cutoff end so that it wants to stay together and give me some support. So I'm not trying to hold a saw and a bunch of cutoffs at the same time, which I don't think I could do. Very good. That's clamped in place. That won't go anywhere. There we go. Now it's going to be a little easier to work with. Before I get started, I wanted to show you the vacuum bagging setup I'm going to use. First of all, I've got my large bag here. It's big enough to fit a piece of 4x8 plywood into it. I've got that bag sitting on top of a sheet of 1/2 inch medium density fiberboard to help make the surface flat. The floor is flat as well, so I should have a good base for my vacuum bag clamping of the tabletop parts or the desktop parts. Inside the bag, I slid a sheet of 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard, and the idea there is to make a surface it's easy to slide this sandwiched into. If you try to slide it against the bag itself, it grabs. It's really hard to do. I've got a couple of layers of a 1/2 inch MDF and 1/4 inch MDF at the entrance to the bag to help make that transition easier, since it's going to be heavy. It's going to be hard to lift. I've also got a piece of meshing. This is plastic meshing that I'll put in the bag on top of the assembly and making sure that it is underneath the nipple that the vacuum pump takes a suction from, and that will help pull the air from all the different parts of the bag. Otherwise, you take the risk of having the bag seal against the MDF, and you don't want that. Okay, my vacuum pump is a Venturi type vacuum pump that I made with parts from JoeWoodworker.com. I think his business is called VeneeredSupplies.com. He's got good instructions on there on how to make a vacuum pump, but essentially I've got an air hose coming from my 100 psi compressor downstairs. It feeds into this black Venturi and simply blows air through, and that creates a suction on this little line, which then creates a vacuum in these two canisters that are sort of like reservoirs. I've got a little gauge here. I can measure my vacuum. Right now I'm about a little under 26 inches of mercury of vacuum. One of the advantages of being at sea level is that you can get plenty of vacuum in a vacuum bag. Here's my hose that I will connect to the nipple when it's time, and I'll seal up the bag with my little sealer. It's just a piece of PVC pipe with another piece of plastic that clamps around it. You put the bag in between these pieces, clamp it, and it makes a nice tight seal. Now, after I put the glue on the surfaces, I'm going to use my brad nailer with 1-inch brads around the periphery to help hold that sandwich together, so that when I slide it in the bag, I don't have these pieces sliding around, which would cause me to have to pull them back out of the bag again. So I think I've got pretty much what I need. I'll go ahead and set the plywood on the floor, get out my measuring devices, measure up some Unibond 800, and roll it on with a roller, and then put the pieces together into the bag, draw a vacuum, and we should be good to go. I already spread the glue on at the rate of 1 quart per 62 square feet. So I made about a quart of glue. Spread it on with a 9-inch foam roller. Now I'm just sliding everything into the bag. I know you can't see it, but I have a window open with a fan pulling air across the room. You should use the Unibond with good ventilation. And because it's still March, I got my heater cranked up. Got to keep the temperature above 65 degrees to use Unibond. Or it won't set properly. And at this temperature I have quite a bit of work time, at least a half hour. Okay, I'm just making sure that there's no place that the bag is tucking underneath any of the plies. We want this to come down nice and flat. I think we're in good shape. Now, Unibond 800 likes it warm. It cures faster when it's warm, and of course, like I said, if it's under 65 degrees, it won't cure at all. So I've got an electric blanket plugged in, covering the whole laminate, and we'll keep it nice and warm, get it nice and cured, nice and evenly, good strong joint. So I've got the plywood in the bag, and you can just hear the venturi pump just started up. Now I've got a piece of 1/4 inch MDF out here that I'm going to use as a template. I've squared up the edge of the pencil lines. You can't see that, I know. I marked the center line, and I put a nail in the floor at the radius for the curve that's on the front. I've got this little device here that allows me to put my tape measure and make it into a compass. So all I have to do is come on out here and get my pencil and hook it up and just go ahead and draw the arc. I could use a string for this compass, but strings stretch. So tape measure doesn't stretch. And there you go. There's half the arc. I'll just go ahead and draw the other half and we'll be done. Okay, the top is out of the vacuum bag now. We've got the 1/4 inch of MDF and 2 layers of 1/2 inch plywood. I've made the template, laid it on here, and I've traced the outline of the template. And now I'm going to use my saber saw to cut the top slightly oversized so that later when I attach the template I can go around with a straight bit, bearing guided router bit, and make sure and make the surface exactly the size of the template. Oh, by the way, this piece, along with the cutoff of the template, are going to be the caul for gluing on the front banding of walnut. So I need to save that. By the way, one other thing. I'm using a downward cutting blade so that the teeth point down, and that puts all the dust on the bottom so that I can see the line that I'm cutting to. Piece so that it doesn't fall off after I finish the cut. This will become the clamping caul for the front banding. There, I've used my straight router bit with the MDF as a template to make the clamping caul for clamping on the front banding on the curved part of the front of the top.